They found Martin Webb 3 days after he stopped screaming. He was in the Rusty Anchor Tavern, still sitting at the same table where he'd been celebrating his good fortune, his hands frozen in front of his face, as if warding off a vision only he could see. His fingernails had torn bloody furrows down his cheeks. When the doctor finally pried his hands away, Martin's eyes were open but saw nothing. Or rather, they saw too much. He would never paint again. He couldn't bear to look at blank canvas without seeing the horror of what he'd become. The doctor asked what had happened to him. The barkeeper, who'd witnessed everything, gave a one-word answer that sent shivers through Pittsburgh's autumn streets. Mercy. Not an act of mercy, not a plea for mercy, but Mercy herself, Mercy Blackwell, the woman they'd tormented for years, the woman they'd called the Gorgon of Allegheny County, the woman who had somehow learned to show people exactly what they were. But to understand how Mercy Blackwell became something more terrifying than any monster they'd imagined, you must first understand what they made her endure. The year was 1855, and in the coal-dusted streets of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there lived a woman whom the townspeople had crowned with the title she never sought, the Gorgon of Allegheny County. Her name was Mercy Blackwell, and she was, by all accounts of those shallow souls who passed judgment, the ugliest woman in America. Mercy's face bore the brutal scars of a childhood accident, a kerosene lamp explosion that had left her skin puckered and twisted like melted wax, one eye milky and sightless, her mouth pulled into a permanent grimace that exposed yellow teeth even when her lips were closed. Her spine curved from rickets in infancy, giving her a hunched appearance that made her seem to scuttle rather than walk. Her hair, once a lustrous auburn according to her late mother, had grown back in patches after the fire, leaving islands of scalp visible between sparse, wiry tufts. But what the townspeople never saw, what they never cared to see, was that Mercy Blackwell possessed a mind as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel and a heart that had once overflowed with kindness. She had taught herself to read from discarded newspapers, had memorized entire volumes of poetry, and could calculate figures faster than the bank clerks on Market Street. None of this mattered to the good people of Pittsburgh. To them, she was merely a monster to mock. The mockery began each morning when Mercy emerged from her tiny room above the tannery to fetch water from the public pump. Children would scatter before her like pigeons, screaming in exaggerated terror. Mothers would clutch their babies closer, as if Mercy's ugliness were a contagion that might infect their precious offspring. Men would elbow each other and snicker, making wagers about whether she was human or some demon spawned from the fires of the tannery below. "There goes Medusa," they would cry. "Hide your eyes, or you'll turn to stone." "Mercy, mercy, have some mercy on our eyes," the young men would shout, thinking themselves terribly clever. On particularly cruel days, boys would throw rotten vegetables, their aim improving with practice. Tomatoes were their favorite. The way they burst against her already ruined face seemed to bring them exceptional joy. Mercy endured it all in silence. What choice did she have? She was alone in the world, her parents long dead, her only brother lost to the Mexican War. She worked 16 hours a day in the tannery, doing work no one else would touch, scraping flesh from hides until her hands bled, breathing in chemical fumes that burned her already damaged lungs. Her wages were a pittance, barely enough to keep her fed and sheltered. But Mercy was not without pride, and pride, when wounded deeply enough and often enough, can transform into something far darker. The transformation began on a crisp October evening when Mercy decided to attend the traveling carnival that had set up on the outskirts of town. It was foolish, she knew, but some small, stubborn part of her still longed for normalcy, for the simple pleasure of seeing the acrobats and hearing the calliope music like any other person. She waited until dusk, hoping the darkness would provide some cover. She wrapped her best shawl, a threadbare thing but clean, around her head and shoulders. She had saved for weeks to afford the 5-cent admission. The carnival grounds blazed with lantern light, and the air smelled of fried dough and animal dung. For a few blessed moments, Mercy lost herself in the spectacle. She watched a strong man lift an anvil above his head. She marveled at a woman who swallowed swords as easily as drawing breath. She even allowed herself a small smile, that terrible, involuntary grimace that was the best her ruined face could manage. Then she heard the barker's voice booming across the fairground. "Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, for the most extraordinary exhibition in all of America. Witness the cabinet of human curiosities. See the bearded lady, the giant of Kentucky, the lobster boy, and tonight, a special addition to our collection." Mercy felt a cold dread creeping through her chest, but curiosity drew her forward. A crowd had gathered around a platform where the barker stood, gesturing dramatically at a series of painted canvas panels depicting various freaks of nature. "Tonight," the barker continued, his voice dripping with theatrical menace, "we present to you the creature you've all whispered about, the beast you feared to see, the very face of evil itself, the one and only Gorgon of Pittsburgh." The canvas dropped, and there, rendered in garish oils, was a grotesque caricature of Mercy Blackwell. But it wasn't just her face that had been depicted. The painting showed her as a monster, with snakes for hair, claws instead of hands, and a body covered in scales. The image was surrounded by scenes of children cowering in terror, of men turning to stone at her gaze. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Some had brought their children specifically to see this new attraction. Mercy stood frozen, her breath coming in short gasps. She watched as the barker continued his performance, spinning elaborate lies about her supposed crimes, how she had cursed families, how crops withered where she walked, how animals died at her touch. "The artist who painted this masterwork," the barker declared, "spent 3 months studying this creature in her natural habitat, risking his very soul to capture her likeness." 3 months. Mercy's mind reeled. Who had been watching her? Who had turned her suffering into entertainment? Then she saw him, Martin Webb, a young man she had thought was different from the others. He had worked briefly at the tannery last spring, and unlike his fellows, he had occasionally spoken to her with what seemed like kindness. He had asked her questions about her life, had seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts. She had been fool enough to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, someone saw her as human. Now Martin Webb stood beside the barker, accepting congratulations on his artwork, counting his share of the admission fees. He had befriended her only to exploit her, to turn her pain into profit. Their eyes met across the crowd. Martin's expression flickered. Was it shame? Guilt? But then he smiled and shrugged, as if to say, "What did you expect?" Something inside Mercy Blackwell broke in that moment, Not her spirit. No, her spirit had been bent and hammered and forged into something far harder than it had been before. What broke was the last chain that had bound her to the world of mercy and forgiveness. She left the carnival without a sound, but she did not go home. Instead, she walked through the darkening streets to the old part of town, where the buildings leaned together like drunken conspirators, where decent folk did not venture after nightfall. There, in a basement room that reeked of sulfur and decay, lived a woman known only as Mother Ash. She was ancient beyond reckoning, her skin the color of week-old bruises, her fingers twisted like tree roots. Some said she was a witch. Some said she was mad. Some said she was both. Mercy had heard the whispers about Mother Ash for years, how she could grant wishes for the right price, how she dealt in vengeance and spite, how she trafficked in the kind of magic that left marks on the soul. "I want them to suffer," Mercy said, without preamble when the old woman opened her door. "Everyone who mocked me, everyone who profited from my pain, I want them to know what it feels like." Mother Ash studied her with eyes that reflected no light, like looking into wells that had no bottom. "Revenge is a meal that takes time to prepare," the crone said, her voice like wind through dead leaves. "But when it's done right, oh child, it satisfies deeper than any feast. What are you willing to pay?" "Everything," Mercy said. "I have nothing worth keeping anyway." Mother Ash smiled, revealing gums where teeth should have been. "Not everything, not yet, but close enough. Come inside." Mother Ash's basement was a warren of shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. Shelves lined every wall, crowded with jars containing things Mercy tried not to examine too closely. Floating organs, preserved creatures that defied natural taxonomy, substances that pulsed with their own internal luminescence. The old woman shuffled to a heavy wooden table scarred with burns and stains. She gestured for Mercy to sit on a three-legged stool that wobbled uncertainly. "You want revenge," Mother Ash said, not as a question, but as a simple statement of fact. "But revenge alone is empty. Revenge without understanding is just violence. What you want, child, is for them to truly see what they've done, to feel it, to live it." Mercy nodded, not trusting her voice. Mother Ash began pulling items from her shelves. A mirror so tarnished it reflected nothing. A bundle of dried herbs that smelled of forgotten graves. A small vial of liquid that seemed to contain trapped starlight. "I will give you a gift," the crone continued. "A mirror. The mirror of true reflection. When people look into it, they don't see their faces. They see their souls as others see them. They see themselves through the eyes of those they've hurt." She laid the items on the table and began to work, grinding herbs in a mortar, muttering words in a language that predated English, that perhaps predated language itself. The air grew thick and heavy. "But here's the art of it," Mother Ash said, her hands moving in intricate patterns over the mirror. "You don't show them the mirror. You become the mirror. Everyone who looks at you will see not your face, but a reflection of their own cruelty. The boy who threw tomatoes will see himself as a tomato-faced monster. The woman who clutched her child will see herself as something so hideous no mother could love. The man who painted you as a demon will see himself as the demon he truly is." Mercy felt a stirring of something hot and dark in her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "But understand this," Mother Ash said, fixing her with that bottomless gaze. This magic feeds on guilt and shame. For those who have none, who are truly cruel to their core, it will not work. And for you, you will see yourself as you truly are, without the damage, without the scars. You will see the woman you might have been. Every time you look at your reflection, you will see what they took from you. Can you bear that? Could she? Mercy thought of Martin Webb's shrug of indifference, of the children's laughter, of a lifetime of cruelty. I can bear anything if it means they finally understand. Mother Ash nodded. Then we begin. But know this. Magic of this kind demands balance. You will carry their guilt and shame in you. It will weigh on you. And when your revenge is complete, when you have shown them all what they are, the magic will demand its final price. What price? Your face will become beautiful, Mother Ash said softly, more beautiful than you ever dreamed. But you will be invisible. People will look through you as if you're not there. You will be lovely and completely unseen, forever. Mercy considered this. To be beautiful but invisible, or to remain ugly and mocked? At least in invisibility there would be peace. I accept. Mother Ash took Mercy's hands in her gnarled fingers. The touch was surprisingly warm. She began to chant, her voice rising and falling in waves. The mirror on the table began to glow, and that glow spread to Mercy's skin, seeping into her pores like water into parched earth. The transformation was not physical. When Mercy looked down at herself, she saw the same twisted body, the same scarred hands. But something had changed. She could feel it, a new awareness, like gaining a sixth sense that let her perceive the hidden ugliness in others. "It is done," Mother Ash said, releasing her hands. "Now go. Show them who they really are." Mercy stood, and even the wobbling stool seemed steadier beneath her feet. She felt stronger, more certain. She had been powerless all her life, at the mercy of others' cruelty. Now she held power of her own. "When do I pay the final price?" she asked at the door. "When the last person sees themselves truly," Mother Ash replied, "or when you die, whichever comes first. Now go. Your feast awaits." The next morning, Mercy Blackwell emerged from her room above the tannery as usual. She walked to the public pump as she had done every day for years. But something was different. The first person to see her was Tommy Fletcher, a 12-year-old boy who had tormented her with particular enthusiasm. He was the best shot among the vegetable throwers, took pride in his accuracy. When Tommy saw Mercy approaching, he reached for a rotten cabbage he'd been saving. But as he looked at her, really looked at her, his hand froze. His eyes went wide with horror. What Tommy saw was not Mercy Blackwell. What he saw was himself, but transformed into a grotesque caricature. His face was a twisted mass of rotten vegetables, tomatoes and cabbages, and turnips fused into a mockery of human features, dripping with decay, crawling with maggots. His hands were covered in slime, his body bent and broken. Tommy screamed. He dropped the cabbage and ran, sobbing in terror. Mercy felt it then, a surge of satisfaction so intense it was almost physical. She could feel Tommy's shame, his sudden, horrible understanding of how he had made her feel. It flowed into her like dark honey, sweet and thick. She continued to the pump. More people saw her, more people reacted. Mrs. Adelaide Pritchard, who had always clutched her baby closer when Mercy passed, looked at her and saw herself as a bloated, monstrous creature too hideous to be near children, her own baby screaming in fear at her touch. She fell to her knees, weeping. Mr. Harold Brennan, who had made countless crude jokes at Mercy's expense, saw himself as a demon with a forked tongue, his words visible as they left his mouth. Cruel, venomous serpents that attacked everything beautiful. One by one, the townspeople of Pittsburgh encountered Mercy Blackwell and saw their own cruelty reflected back at them. Some fled, some fell to their knees in spontaneous prayer, some simply stood frozen, unable to look away from the horror of their own hearts. But not everyone was affected. Jacob Marsh, the tannery owner who had underpaid and overworked Mercy for years, looked at her with the same dismissive indifference he always had. He felt no shame for how he'd treated her, saw no wrong in exploiting her desperation. When he looked at Mercy, he saw only what he'd always seen, a useful tool, nothing more. The magic didn't work on the truly heartless Mother Ash had warned. Jacob Marsh had long ago calcified his soul against guilt. Mercy noted this with interest. The magic was teaching her something. It was showing her who was merely thoughtlessly cruel and who was genuinely evil. There was a difference, it seemed, and the difference mattered. As word spread through Pittsburgh about the strange affliction affecting those who saw Mercy Blackwell, people began to react in different ways. Some locked themselves in their homes, afraid to face her. Others sought her out, driven by a desperate need for absolution. By afternoon, a crowd had gathered outside the tannery. But instead of mocking her, they were silent, fearful. Some wept openly. A few called out apologies that rang hollow even to their own ears. Mercy looked out at them from her window and felt the weight of their shame pressing against her consciousness. Mother Ash had been right. She was carrying their guilt now, feeling it as if it were her own. It was heavy, suffocating, but also intoxicating. Finally, they understood. Finally, they felt what she had felt. But one person was conspicuously absent from the crowd: Martin Webb. Mercy found Martin Webb 3 days later at the Rusty Anchor Tavern, drunk and boasting about his carnival painting. He'd apparently made a considerable sum from the exhibition and was celebrating his good fortune. "To the Gorgon," he toasted, raising his glass. "May she remain ugly forever, so I may continue to profit." His companions laughed nervously. They'd heard the stories about what happened when you looked at Mercy Blackwell. Some thought it was mass hysteria. Others weren't so sure. Mercy entered the tavern through the back door, moving through the shadows. She'd learned that the magic worked better when the encounter was direct, unexpected, when her targets had no time to look away or prepare themselves. She emerged from the darkness directly in front of Martin's table. "Hello, Martin," she said quietly. Martin looked up, and his smile died. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. What Martin Webb saw was worse than what the others had seen, because Martin's cruelty had been more calculated, more deliberate. He had befriended her specifically to exploit her, had sketched her in secret, had taken her trust and transformed it into profit. What he saw now was himself as a living canvas, but the painting was his soul laid bare. His skin was covered in grotesque caricatures of all the people he'd hurt, all the confidences he'd betrayed, all the kindnesses he'd exploited. Each image writhed and shifted, showing the moments of his cruelty in vivid, undeniable detail. His face was a palimpsest of lies, each one visible beneath the others, creating a shifting mass of deception. But worse than that, He saw himself through Mercy's eyes on the day they'd met at the carnival. He felt her hope, her fragile trust, and then her devastation. He experienced her emotions as if they were his own, felt the moment her heart broke, felt her pain like a physical wound. Martin Webb began to scream. Unlike Tommy Fletcher's scream of fear, this was a scream of understanding, of unbearable self-knowledge. He clawed at his own face, trying to tear away what he saw there, trying to remove the vision of his own monstrous soul. Mercy watched without expression as he collapsed, still screaming, still scratching at himself. The other patrons fled the tavern, leaving only Mercy and the writhing artist. "Did you know," Mercy said conversationally, "that when I was a child, before the fire, I wanted to be a painter. I would draw pictures in the dirt with sticks. My mother said I had a gift for capturing beauty." Martin's screams had subsided into whimpers. He looked up at her with wild, uncomprehending eyes. "You took your gift," Mercy continued, "and you used it to hurt. You could have painted anything, Martin. You could have created beauty. Instead, you chose cruelty, and now you see what that choice has made you." She turned to leave, then paused. "The vision will fade in time, but you'll always know. Every time you pick up a brush, you'll remember what you really are." Word of Martin Webb's breakdown spread through Pittsburgh like wildfire. The artist had been found in the tavern, catatonic, his hand still raised to his face, as if trying to block out a vision only he could see. When he finally spoke again 3 days later, he would never paint again. He couldn't bear to look at blank canvas without seeing the horror of his own soul. But the town's reaction to these events was not what Mercy had expected. Rather than reforming, rather than truly changing, many people simply avoided her more carefully. They learned the patterns of her movements and altered their routes accordingly. They warned each other when she was near. The Witch of Allegheny, they called her now. The name had changed, but the underlying cruelty remained. Some, however, sought her out deliberately. The first was Emma Cordell, a middle-aged woman who had been among the most vocal in her disgust of Mercy. Emma came to the tannery one evening, her face pale and drawn. "I need you to look at me again," Emma said. Mercy, who had been scraping a hide, didn't turn around. "Why?" "Because I need to remember what I saw when I looked at you. It faded after a few days. I need to see it again." Now Mercy did turn. "You want to punish yourself?" "No," Emma said softly. "I want to change, but I'm weak. I already feel myself forgetting, making excuses. I need to remember what I am so I can become something better." Mercy studied the woman's face. There was genuine remorse there, genuine desire for transformation. "The magic doesn't work that way. You can't use it as a tool for self-improvement. That's not its purpose." "Then what is its purpose?" Emma asked. Mercy had to think about that. What was the purpose? Revenge, yes, but revenge toward what end? She'd made them suffer, made them see themselves truly. But to what purpose? "I don't know anymore," Mercy admitted quietly. Emma nodded slowly. "Then perhaps we're both lost." After Emma left, Mercy sat alone in the darkness of the tannery, breathing in the familiar stench of chemicals and death. The weight of others' guilt pressed down on her, and for the first time, she felt the burden of it clearly. She was carrying the shame of dozens of people now, and it was beginning to crush her. Mother Ash had warned her about this. The magic demanded balance. For every person who saw themselves truly, Mercy absorbed their guilt. She was becoming a repository of shame, a living vessel for the town's collective cruelty. And she realized something else. The magic was incomplete. Showing people their cruelty wasn't enough. It didn't heal them or her. It just spread the pain around differently. But it was too late to stop now. The magic had its own momentum. Tommy Fletcher's mother, Sarah, came to see Mercy on a cold November morning. She brought her son with her. Tommy had not been the same since his encounter with Mercy. He barely ate, barely spoke. He had nightmares every night, waking up screaming about rotting vegetables and crawling maggots. "Please," Sarah Fletcher begged. "He's just a boy. He didn't understand what he was doing." Mercy looked at the child. Tommy stared at the ground, unable to meet her eyes. "Didn't understand?" Mercy said. "He threw things at me almost every day for 2 years. How many times must you hurt someone before you understand you're hurting them?" "He's 12 years old," Sarah said desperately. "I was 7 when the fire took my face," Mercy replied. Where was Mercy for me? But even as she said it, Mercy felt a twinge of something uncomfortable. Tommy was a child, yes, but he was also a victim of the adults around him. Adults who had taught him by example that cruelty to the ugly and weak was acceptable, even amusing. "What do you want from me?" Mercy asked. "Make it stop," Sarah pleaded. "Whatever you did to him, undo it." "I can't," Mercy said, and it was true. The magic didn't belong to her anymore. It ran on its own rails now, powered by guilt and shame. The vision has faded by now anyway. What's tormenting him is his own conscience. "He's 12, Sarah repeated, as if his age absolved everything. Mercy knelt down so she was eye level with Tommy. The boy flinched, but didn't run. "Look at me," Mercy said. Slowly, painfully, Tommy raised his eyes. When their gazes met, Mercy deliberately loosened her hold on the magic, let it rest dormant. Tommy saw only her real face, scarred, twisted, but human. Just a woman's face, bearing the marks of old suffering. "I forgive you," Mercy said, and was surprised to find she meant it. "You're a child. You learned cruelty from people who should have taught you kindness, but now you know better. Now you understand what it feels like to be seen as a monster. Don't let that understanding go to waste." Tommy began to cry, not tears of terror, but of relief and genuine remorse. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Sarah Fletcher pulled her son into her arms, looking at Mercy with something like gratitude, though it was mixed with lingering fear. After they left, Mercy felt something shift inside her. The weight of Tommy's guilt had lifted slightly, not because she'd removed it, but because he'd faced it honestly and begun the work of changing. Perhaps, Mercy thought, that was the true purpose of the magic. Not revenge for its own sake, but forcing people to reckon with their cruelty so they might become better. But if that was true, what did it mean for her? Was she becoming better, or just redistributing pain? Not everyone could be reached by conscience. Mercy learned this the hard way when she encountered the men who truly had none. Jacob Marsh, the tannery owner, had watched the town's transformation with amusement. He'd seen people break down, seen them weep and wail, and felt nothing but contempt for their weakness. "Scared of a scarred woman," he muttered. "Ridiculous." He confronted Mercy in the tannery one evening after the other workers had left. "You think you're something special now," he said. "You think you've got some kind of power?" Mercy looked at him steadily. "Don't you see anything when you look at me?" "I see what I've always seen," Marsh said. A crippled woman who's lucky I give her work at all. You should be grateful, not playing witch and scaring the town. The magic swirled around Mercy, trying to work, trying to show Marsh the reflection of his own cruelty. But there was nothing to reflect. Marsh had no shame, no guilt, no capacity for self-reflection. He was an empty mirror, and the magic couldn't show him what wasn't there. "You're going to leave Pittsburgh," Marsh said, "tonight, before you cause more trouble. If you don't, I'll see you hanged as a witch. They burned witches in Salem. They can hang them here." Mercy felt fear then, real fear. Marsh meant it, and he had the influence to do it. The magic had made people afraid of her, but fear could transform into violence quickly when men like Marsh directed it. She had until morning to leave town, Marsh told her. After that, he'd spread the word that she was a genuine threat, not just an unfortunate woman. He'd turned the town's fear into a mob. That night, Mercy packed her few possessions and made her way one last time to Mother Ash's basement. The old woman was waiting for her, as if she'd known Mercy would come. "The heartless ones," Mother Ash said. "They're the real monsters, aren't they? Not the people who look ugly on the outside, but the ones who are ugly all the way through and don't care." "What do I do?" Mercy asked. "You leave," Mother Ash said simply. "The magic has shown you what it can. Now it will show you what it can't. Some people can't be reached. Some people can't be changed. That's the hardest lesson of all." "Then what was the point?" Mercy demanded. "I wanted them all to suffer like I suffered, but the ones who deserve it most feel nothing." "The point," Mother Ash said gently, "is that you tried. You forced this town to look at itself. Some people changed because of it. Not all, but some. Isn't that worth something?" Mercy thought of Tommy Fletcher's tears, of Emma Cordell's desire to be better, of the dozen other people who had sought her out to apologize, who were genuinely trying to transform their cruelty into kindness. "Maybe," Mercy said, "but it doesn't feel like enough." "Revenge never does," Mother Ash said. "That's its nature. It promises satisfaction, but delivers only emptiness. But what you did, showing them the truth of themselves, that went beyond revenge. That was justice, and justice, unlike revenge, actually changes things." Mother Ash handed Mercy a small bundle. "Food for your journey, and this." She pressed a small, tarnished mirror into Mercy's hand, the original mirror from their first meeting. "When you're ready to pay the final price," Mother Ash said, "break this mirror. Your face will become beautiful, and you will become invisible. You'll be free of their cruelty forever, but you'll also be free of human connection. Choose wisely when that time comes." Mercy left Pittsburgh that night, walking west along the dusty road as autumn gave way to early winter. She took work where she could find it, in other tanneries, in slaughterhouses, in all the places where the ugly and desperate found employment. But now she carried her curse with her. In every new town, people would look at her and see themselves. Some would be transformed by the experience. Others would simply force her to move on. She became a kind of wandering prophet of cruelty, showing people the truth of their own hearts, whether they wanted to see it or not. Years passed. Mercy grew older, her body more bent, her face more lined, but the magic remained as strong as ever. She thought often of Mother Ash's words about the final price. To be beautiful but invisible. Was that a curse or a blessing? She kept the small mirror with her always, sometimes taking it out to look at it, wondering when she would finally break it. Then, in the winter of 1860, in a small town in Ohio, Mercy met a man named Samuel. Samuel was blind. He couldn't see her scarred face, her hunched body. He knew her only by her voice, her touch, her character. And slowly, carefully, he fell in love with the woman she actually was. For the first time in her life since the fire, Mercy felt seen, truly seen, not as a monster or a curiosity or a vehicle for magic, but as a person. Samuel proposed to her on a spring morning. "I know what people say about you," he told her. "I know they think you're ugly. I know they fear you. But I don't care about any of that. I love who you are." Mercy held the proposal in her heart like a fragile bird. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to accept this gift of love that had been denied to her for so long. But she thought of the magic, of the weight of guilt and shame she carried, of the curse that would eventually claim her beauty and her visibility. "I can't," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm not who you think I am." "Then tell me who you are," Samuel said simply. And so Mercy told him everything, about the magic, about the revenge, about the price she would eventually have to pay. She expected him to recoil, to reject her. Instead, Samuel took her scarred hands in his. "Then we'll face it together," he said, "for however long we have." They married in June, in a small ceremony with no guests. Mercy had never been happier, and that happiness terrified her because she knew it couldn't last. The magic had shown her something she hadn't understood before, that the greatest cruelty isn't in mocking someone's appearance, but in denying them love, connection, human warmth. The townspeople of Pittsburgh had made her feel that she was unworthy of love because of her appearance, and she had believed them. But Samuel loved her anyway. Not despite her appearance, but with complete disregard for it. For 5 years, they were happy. Samuel worked as a piano tuner, and Mercy helped him, learning the subtle art of listening for perfect pitch. They lived simply but contentedly. But the magic never left her. People still saw their own cruelty reflected in her face, and slowly the weight of all that accumulated guilt began to crush her. She could feel it physically now, a pressure in her chest, a heaviness in her bones. Mother Ash had warned her that the magic would demand its price eventually. She was carrying the shame of hundreds of people now, perhaps thousands, from all the towns she'd passed through. One morning in early 1865, Mercy woke to find she couldn't breathe properly. The weight was literal now, pressing down on her lungs. Samuel felt her distress and held her. "What's happening?" "It's time," Mercy whispered. "The magic wants its due." She took out the small mirror Mother Ash had given her all those years ago. She'd kept it safe, wrapped in cloth, hidden at the bottom of her trunk. "If I break this," she told Samuel, "I'll become beautiful, but I'll also become invisible. You won't be able to see me anymore. No one will." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I've never seen you anyway, Mercy. I've only ever known you, and I'll keep knowing you no matter what." "But you'll be alone," Mercy said. "People will think you're talking to empty air." "Then let them think I'm mad," Samuel said. "I'd rather be mad with you than sane without you." Mercy held the mirror, feeling its weight, lighter than the guilt she carried, but somehow more significant. And then she understood the final lesson of the magic. The cruelest thing the townspeople of Pittsburgh had done wasn't mocking her face. It was making her believe that her face was all she was, that her appearance was the sum total of her worth. The magic had shown them the truth of their cruelty, but it had also trapped Mercy in a cycle of revenge that denied her own humanity. To break the mirror, to accept beauty and invisibility, would be to finally let go of that cycle. To say that she was more than her appearance, more than their cruelty, more than the revenge she'd taken. "I love you," Mercy said to Samuel. "I love you too," he replied. Mercy raised the mirror and brought it down hard against the floor. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, and Mercy felt the magic leave her like water draining from a tub. The weight lifted from her chest,